I used to show this to people that could stand. I would have them, okay, so now try to lift your pinky toe. Those of you that can move your pinky toes, lift up your pinky toes. And then if I started to use more force in my voice, come on, lift it. Come on, lift it, right? When people are standing in particular, they tend to move their pinky finger because at a certain point of lack of feedback, the brain or the mind grabs something else to stand in for the pinky toe giving feedback. And it turns out that the pinky toe and the pinky finger are surprisingly in this weird, deep way innervated relatively close together. So you find somebody often substituting their pinky finger for moving their pinky toe, right? And then so I'll say things like, no, everyone move your pinky toe without moving. Do you notice your pinky finger? And everyone laughs because they're embarrassed. But I try to say, this is an important mind habit. It's why people clench their jaw in poses too, or hold their breath, is that there will be habits when your mind cannot get a way to feel the success of doing the instruction, and it'll grab that. I usually joke and say, it'll grip the snot out of a different part of your body, trying to convince your body that your mind that it's doing the work it's being asked to, right? So so working harder or deeper is often allowing for less feedback, but still staying grounded. This is part of what we're trying to practice when we center, is open the gates, the doorways. I always say you're opening to more of the energy of the nervous system when you're centering. Don't think you're becoming less. Don't overindulge in thinking you're becoming more, but allow a different quality of sensation into your pose. So sit up straight and tall. So I'll say things. Remember, I'm always trying to teach insights about the subtle body, right? A level of perception in the nervous system that is less direct, because that's the level that emanates from your spine and does not always result in control. Okay, there's a whole way of experiencing. Breath tends to be able to touch that level of access that your Hermes nervous system provides into your body without the overt ability to control through muscular action. So again, now soften the inside of your mouth. Soften the inside of your mouth and let something drop. So that's often, I want you to soften the organs of perception, gather up more of you. In other words, more of your brain's ability to collect information from your body. Include the part you don't control directly and allow that to be not covered up by action, right? So that's when I say drop and let something drop, and now ground your sitting bones. Now feel your feet on the pedals. So we're creating structure for the mind to employ its will. Right? You're going to find that when the mind becomes more active, it'll tend to grip the jaw on the inside of the mouth. So the thing about this quiet part of our consciousness, it usually reveals fatigue. The mind doesn't quite know what to do with it, doesn't know how to put it into action, doesn't know how to use your will in relationship to this level of sensation. but breath actually touches it. So feeling your feet and your sitting bones and a gentle lift of your chest. Now use your breath to create even more sensation. So the inhalation tends to open it. The exhalation tends to bring things towards the midline, right? So there's an expansion, a movement back to the midline that you're observing as a way to give your mind reference to the less tangible input coming to your brain from your body. And this we're using as part of centering right now. So pay extra attention. So as you're doing this extra mental attention, you might have tensed the inside of your mouth again or your jaw. Probably so. So I tend to I want you to pay attention now to the inhalation, staying in your feet, staying in your sitting bones, slightly lifting your chest. Notice the gentle nudge of the inhalation into your rib cage. I sometimes think of when a dog kind of nudges you, won't you give me a treat? Right? Come on. Right? And think of your ribs as the fingers of your spine. It literally comes right out of your spine, right? The fingers of your spine, which we know has magical energy in it, the bones and the spinal cord, right? That that your breath is expanding into your fingertips or fingers. And so for your spine, the rib cage is a form of fingertips. I'm trying to get you to the intercostal muscles now. So when I realize that as a gentle nudge, like a dog nicely trying to go, hey, don't forget about me. I want a snack. Watch the exchange between the inhalation and the way that pushes and moves awareness around the spine into the back body where the ribs actually attach to the spinal column. But as you watch that direction, feel a suppleness and gentleness of how the inhalation and exhalation is making your intercostal muscles slightly more pliable. The rhythm itself of breathing is soothing for those muscles. So the limitation of the mind is I've directed you so much to the rib cage, you probably lost your feet, the lift of your chest, the inside of your mouth, right? So you're trying to have all of it. There's so much input coming from your body through your brain to your mind. Simultaneity takes practice. It takes less judgment. Don't prioritize. There's a lot here. So as you feel the gentle nudge of the inhalation into the rib cage touching the intercostal muscles, be more aware and feel the space between your ears and your shoulders along the side of your neck. Notice that brings a level of attention up through the spine. Oh my God, it's all connected. And your breath touches all of it. It's not just about your breath. Prana follows consciousness more than it follows breath. In this place, Re-feel your sitting bones and feet. Lift your chest. Feel this amazingly subtle interplay in your body and stay grounded and feel the whole room. From here, asana begins. The activation of your will into physical movement needs to include this, not just what you get to control. Let go of your day. Prepare your mind to do yoga. The expansion of the inhalation into the structure of asana. The exhalation towards the midline and the growing of the spine. This is what I mean by lower your center of gravity from your head to your center of your chest. Let your spine be the leader. Your core channel. Precede your mind. Good. And then release. Activate the sternum up. Drop the chin down. Practice one of the core energetic congruences in asana. It's a bandha. This activates the rib cage, makes the fingers of the spine be slightly more activated. Can you activate that because you're activating your diaphragm, but still keep it soft? And let the fingers of the spine receive even though it's more activated. The drop of the chin, make sure the earth stays here as you're activating upward. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So did anyone, as I talked on for an unceasing amount of time, right there, did you find your mind wandering? It was too long. Damn it, would that guy just shut up? I can tell you, if I weren't talking, you would have disembodied. You would have gone into the ether without body awareness, which is part of what meditation is, right? You use the body to step off into another dimension of perception within the nervous system, within the mind-body relationship. I kept talking, and then it's like, I don't even hear the words anymore, right? You need to practice not getting bored and practice this type of activation of your spine when you're not in class. Don't wait for class. I'm gonna talk. Silence and activation is your job. That's your practice, right? I think, kind of. All right, let's try it again. Center fast. We went through that long one. I'm not going to say a thing. Do it all. Everything I just, because I saw some of you moving and yawning and doing all those things when I kept talking, right? So do it yourself. See how long you stay. See if I can stay quiet. Add the body and bring your hands into prayer if you can. A way to touch your midline. Again, if having your hands in a prayer doesn't work, put your hand on your sternum. Would be another good one. Find your midline. Activate some. Activation and muscular action is a way to give a feedback loop to your mind. As you activate your will, keep the inside of your mind soft. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Make it tender at the top of your spine, at the mouth. Feel the scalp on your head, but keep active down through the sitting bones and feet. Balance in this space, deeper than physical. Good, and then release. Thumbs up if somehow, this happens to me, is it when I actually find the midline and do something like hands in prayer, both elbows on a table or both hands on my lap, my mind calms down. I can locate the midline. Remember, the mind is going to enter the body through reference. It's going to need reference to the emptiness for the mind to participate. Right? And the mind doesn't quite know. So I take very seriously a line that was attributed to the historical Buddha, which is the first foundation of mindfulness, which I think is something that needs to be thought about, what mindfulness means. Because it probably includes emptiness, right? But the first foundation of mindfulness is the body. Right? And you get lines from other yogic texts like prana follows conscious more than it follows breath. Right? So my ability to transcend this experience might, in fact, get amplified if I have body awareness too. So what if that focus, the dharana, right, depending on how you pronounce it, has to include mind and body to be called focus? Remember, that's going to be a limb different than meditation. It's not the same. Meditation is not going to include the body in the same way that asana is. Right? They're going to be different limbs. When I can find the midline using another form of reference, like my hands or my elbows on the table, I want to bisect right down the center of my nose. I learned this in Baddha Konasana, where you're sitting on the floor and the soles of your feet go together, because then your heels are at the midline too, right? So you've got a midline that travels from inside to out when your hands are in prayer. Except I can't put my hands in prayer in Baddha Konasana because I go off balance, right? So I've got a problem in my adaptive pose. But so I reference a lot of the inner heels, right? And the sitting bones, because I want you to find the midline. But now I want you to find it from outside in by using your hands in prayer, or using your hands on the table, or on your thighs. So remember, you feel the sitting bones and activate through the sitting bones, not just to actually feel your sitting bones, but to allow that there's space in between. And the space in between is what's touched and activated by the inhalation. Prana rewards structure. asana provides structure to both the felt and unfelt aspects of your consciousness. So don't leave your body right now. Come into it. This is what asana is showing you. How to include the body in focus, into what focus is. But wait, we're not moving enough. My mind's getting squeamish being asked to feel something so basic. Yeah. Feeling mind and body simultaneously at a basic level is what hard work is. Making things physical like a football player or an athlete, that's easy. That's a way of using focus to cover the unseen dimension. All right, open your eyes. So what the hell? So why do I do stuff like this? So Renee's already moving around, right? Thank God he's going to let us out of this jail. He's going to let there be stuff in the body. Are you kidding me? Was that focus just your mind, by the way? Or was I asking you to practice focus in a deepened dimension, right? So now I'm just moving around because, damn it, I do this every class. I usually just don't wait 32 minutes to go, wait, this energy that's empty doesn't have to be so freaking serious, for God's sakes. It can actually be happy, all right? And so the creation of space through flexibility, I always laugh at students that want to be more flexible, as if flexibility could ever be an end in itself. Well, for God's sakes, I've seen some of the worst students I've ever seen. Here's a funny story. You guys know who Circus Soleil? Bunch of like wild acrobats. Do you know what Circus Soleil is? Thumbs up, right? So one of my friends that I started yoga with became the PT for Circus Soleil, right, in Vegas. And they thought they wanted to do yoga classes, right? And they got super pissed off when their flexibility didn't help them. In fact, they started off with everyone in class, and then it got smaller and smaller because they were thinking that the flexibility should make them good yoga students. It actually made them crappy yoga students. They earned nothing, right? They had to earn nothing. All right, so take your legs wide. I'm taking my knees wide because I'm trying to take this energy that I was trying to be so deep with and basic in, and I'm using asana to open space, right? The flexibility is not the end. The flexibility opens doorways, but you need to earn your flexibility. So some of my worst students, or the ones I worry about that are going to get really injured, are the super flexible ones, right? So I'm taking up more space here. So my legs are wide and my arms are wide. And then I'm going to synchronize different movements. I'm going to put my screen down. I'm just making yoga poses up right now, right? Because like you have to be more creative when you get around in a wheelchair, right? Or you're sitting in a chair. So I'm just making stuff up like it's a yoga pose, right? So I'm taking my legs wide again. And so I was just so I'm making sure the space opens. Oh, my groins are tight today. Holy guacamole, right? So I'm like gonna do this a couple times because I want the feeling of space where my spine touches my legs. Remember, the energy of my spine splits in two and becomes legs. Right? It splits in two and becomes arms, right? So I'm trying to make sure the junction gets awake a little bit. Otherwise, right? And I'm trying to get this energy of my legs, and now I'm going to push on one and push on the other. Why? I'm trying to put more input from my body to my mind. I'm not just trying to loosen up. I'm trying to get my mind to hear by changing inputs in my body, from my body through my brain to my mind. Because I know that this junction is going to be really important when I'm sitting. This junction collapsing between my spine and my legs is probably why they say sitting's the new smoking, right? Because of office work. So now I've got more of my legs connected to on my radar of my mind, right? So that's why I'm using rhythm, pushing down, see, for those of you that can stand, I can't push weight through my feet, so I'm pushing my hands down. So there's input coming into the heel, the bones of my legs, and I'm trying to hear it so I can keep it with me, right? So I'm using other techniques. Some of you can actually push through your heels, but those of you that can push through your heels aren't having to learn it as deep, right? I'm trying to use rhythm and movement to find where my legs are, right? So now I'm going to take the center of my chest and the base of my spine. So when my arms go wide too, I'm trying to make sure it's coming from my spine, right? Out. Now it's hard for me to feel this when I go off balance because my connection to my legs depends on me being on the front edge of my sitting bones, right? For my mind to hear it. When I go with my arms wide, I fall back behind the balance point. So my yoga pose gets worse and harder. So now I've got to, when I'm behind the balance point, because it's the only way I can balance with my arms wide, I have to find a different way to keep connection to my legs. So those of you that are damn lucky that can sit up like this, right, can press down to your heels and extend from the inner groin to the inner knee. I can't. I have to find a different doorway. I'm going to have to go inward. I'm going to have to see the yoga pose, activate my spine up and down to fill my legs and my arms. I don't get to quickly, and then drop your arms. I don't get to quickly do it through physical action. I have to be more aware, right? So do a lot of you. Again, and even those of you that can balance like this, because it's too easy for you, you don't realize what you're doing. It's intense. If I hold my arms up here a long time, you know why I get sore? This side of my neck, because it's not as long as the other side. So I start to learn things. So then it's about your soreness. If I hold my arms up a long time, I will end up sore over here because I'm over gripping over there. Good, and then release. I'm coming back to the midline. Because why wouldn't I want all my poses to come back to the midline? So in well-taught Iyengar yoga, even between sides, not just between poses, Iyengar suggests coming back to Tadasana, right? So I'm coming back to the midline, but maybe we've already did this in the breathing part of this. I expand on inhalation in every direction, following the natural flow of energy from my spine into the world, but I come to the midline on exhalation. So I want to stay alert in Tadasana, feel the expansion of inhalation, but make sure I'm coming back to the midline on exhalation and lengthening my spine. So Tadasana between poses is not just a relaxation pose. It's a centering pose. Use your breath to center too. Then it gets overwhelming, right? Your mind gets, take your legs right again. Your mind gets overwhelmed because when I use all these words that you're not used to practicing, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to be a good enough yoga student. How am I ever going to do this? I can never be this way. And why? And then as we age, we get like, why would I even want to? That's stupid. We find all these ways to resist as we age, right? So I'm going back and forth again, right? So now I want to get my intercostal muscles more activated because I want to touch and have more receptivity between my breath and my spine, right? So I'm moving and lifting my chest here a little bit, getting my ribs more activated. But I want to make sure it stays in relationship to my spine, right? And my legs. So I'm moving back and forth here, trying to create a buzz in my legs. See, you don't get to create humming in your legs. Those of you that can feel everything. I do this long enough and my legs start to light up. Like they start to hum, right? And because I'm using the action of my spine, my consciousness in my legs to increase the underlying hum of my life force. Because remember, I'm not going to be able to do as many standing poses, right? And I'm going to come back to midline and feel again. I'm going to make sure my alignment amplifies my midline by putting my knees together, right? So it's like, oh. So now I'm coming forward and going back, changing the inputs to from my body to my brain to my mind. But now I'm making sure I'm amplifying the midline, right? So if you had a belt at home, you could belt your legs and do this if you wanted. All this is so I don't lose it when I go like this again. Can I still have my midline even though my body is not in the midline? The answer is yes. Consciousness is miraculous, right? So I'm lifting my chest. So now if I want more earth in my midline, I'm bringing my legs back together. So I hope you're doing all this movement. I'm trying to get you to move on purpose. Like if you're just listening to my instructions, you're stealing, right? Okay, so come forward. So now I'm coming forward again. I'm swinging through the midline, and then I'm going to activate Cobra. Remember last week? Cobra comes out of the earth, right? And then I fall back behind the balance point. I start to notice forward, down, earth, rise, right? Go back behind the balance point, right? I wanted to make sure this is all, and I'm going to rise up, right? And then if I start using my will a lot, right, to do the rising rather than the spine, the snake coming out of the earth, more slinky. If I start using my will more, we start to go towards upward facing dog, right? So here I'm behind the balance point. My attention focuses because I come on my sitting bones. Now, instead of just being slinky, I'm going to activate harder. Remember, we even turned this into chaturanga last week? I think I was just funning last week. And then go back and let it collapse. Even collapsed energy has to come into asana. Forward, up, use my will, roll my shoulders back. Wait, and then last week I was doing stuff like up over into a back bend, like Urdhva and comparing the energy differences between going over the back of my chair to coming forward out of the earth, doing it with more and less will, right? Then I was telling you, don't forget how much will there is. Put your lean back, put your arms by your side, chaturanga, hit down with your sitting one, stretch out to the top of your head, drop your shoulder blades, broaden across your collarbones. For God's sakes, use your will. But can you use your will without covering everything up? I don't know. That's going to take practice. So one of the ways, and then release, one of the ways that I think Bikasangar, we're going to do that again in a second, is trying to mitigate the violent consequences of overusing your will, right, is by making you be more aware of your skin. Because I find if I have to include skin awareness while I'm using my will, my mind has to be less violent because I'm in a bigger landscape. Notice I'm talking right now. Some of you are going to water and needing to exhale and stuff because what we're just doing was hard. So I'm actually biding time so you can get grounded again. so you can have your midline, so your mind doesn't get overwhelmed. All this is part of the sequence, right? Now we're going to go back again. Remember, I'm going back to the midline because in a little bit, I'm going to let you see where this is going. I want your legs wide and your midline activated, right? And I want you to like know the prana of the midline, right? So now, right, we're doing all this stuff to make sure there's rhythm coming out of the earth, right? And the activation of will here. Now have your hands here. You be more aware, even if your hands can't open, right? Be more aware of the skin on your hands, on your palms. Drop the shoulder blades, spread them, broaden across your collarbones. As you do that, roll the inner upper head of the third one in and down and extend down to the inner heel, right? Make this action and the bottom action Chaturanga Dandasana. Good, and then release. Come forward. Here's the earth. Know you're coming through Cobra at first, right? You're going to go back and go, oh, and go to the sunlight, back over your chair, right? And know that there's a smile here. Now come forward and make this up dog, not Cobra. Boom, come on, use your will. Remember, if Chaturanga and Cobra had offspring, it would be upward facing dog. Right? So that's an action. Can you feel your rib cage now with your will? Now use your breath to touch the intercostal muscles. Don't forget the nudge, the gentle nudge of your inhalation in the fortress of your will. Good, and then release. Whew, that just made me thirsty. When you combine the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, you will get thirsty, right? So I'm trying to use rhythm here a little bit to make my mouth less dry. Trying to like remember to feel. So I'm rocking again. Okay, so now what about this rib cage stuff? So I'm taking my thumbs, I'm pushing it into them like I have suspenders, like I'm Farmer Joe. And I'm trying to like get, so this allows me to activate my will more because I've got enough structure so my mind can focus its mental will through my body. Good, and then release, right? But we want this other level too. So sit up straight and tall, right? Use alignment. Now inhale and then exhale from the back ribs, like as if I'm pushing on the inner edge of each shoulder blade. And notice how that lengthens your spine. So as the exhalation from the back ribs makes you go towards the midline, you try to keep awareness in your intercostal muscles. Don't just go to your spine. Huh. I wonder what's going on in twists. All right, take your legs wide. Well, actually, God dang it, I lied to you. This class goes till noon, just so you know. All right, no problem. So I'm coming back here. So I want you to lean over, right? And I want you to, instead of just like thinking it's on the outer body, I want you to use the leverage to seriously activate your intercostal muscles, right? To feel them, not activate them. So I'm using gravity changes. So this shoulder, this front shoulder here, it's rolling under to make sure this side of my rib cage stays alert, right? So I'm really trying to get, and all of a sudden I'm going like, oh, you mean like these standing poses, if you know the names of them, side flank pose or Parsvakonasana or even Trikonasana are actually about activating the fingers of my spine to connect to my legs. So look what I'm doing here. I'm grabbing my leg over here. I'm activating my rib cage like a standing pose would. but I'm making sure my mind stays aware over here. And I'm twisting a little bit. All these standing poses have twists to activate and awaken the fingers of my spine, my rib cage. Going back over this way. So as you know, I drop over here because of my scoliosis. So this side of my rib cage, really hard for me. So I'm going back, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to go my arm up here because that makes me collapse too much over there. So on this side, I'm keeping my hand down by my hip so I can keep lengthening over here. I don't know what your pose is, right? You've got to figure out what makes it the most yogic, right? So I'm tipped over, changing my spine in relationship to space, giving new inputs to my brain to get to my mind, breathing into my rib cage from the midline out. How do I find the midline? Well, your sitting bones probably really matter because the space between your sitting bones is where the prana is, the untapped prana. Good, and then release. Ooh, I'm rocking again because that freaking took my breath away, which is a sign that my mind was freaking out with the amount of input, right? When I'm holding my breath, my mind is overwhelmed. Isn't it great? You can overwhelm your own mind with your instructions, right? By what you're trying to get your mind to do. It's like I have to like compensate for how hard I just did that. So now I'm going to take over. I've got my legs wide now. Trying to center enough to find my rib cage and the intercostal muscles on both sides of my ribs because I tend to lose this side, which means I lose this leg, which means my toes aren't as where on this side. Not surprising, I have a hammer toe on that leg because the energy here, because the collapse here doesn't make it down my left side the same. All these things are connected. I'm going over. I'm twisting. Now we're going to do Parsvakonasana, right? If you can, first it goes here. Then this one is more like the back bend, right? You kind of go like, oh shit, that's fun. Uh-oh, going to make for less space. Parsvakonasana. Now my rib cage has to lead my arms because my arm's going back to the midline, but I still have to reach for the sun with my rib cage. I still have to extend down through from each hip bone to each knee, right? Good. So I'm sinking my arm into the midline. I'm still keeping the spine reaching for the sun. I'm making sure I keep the earth by staying down. One more time on this side. Earth, open, turn, up, sinking more of me into the midline, not losing the rib cage and the spine, touching the sky. And the only way it can do that is if I go down to the earth. Good, and then release. Stay with your legs, but I got someone trying to get in the room right now, so I got to kind of hit a minute. We got to do the other side twice. I don't know. I hope that took your breath away. It's taking mine away. Meaning my mind got overwhelmed again and the prana started rushing and I'm feeling a deep heat, not just a sweaty heat. Right? All right. So hopefully your legs are still wide. I'm going to have challenge. So I'm finding my midline by using rhythm here. Finding the lightness because it's about to get intense because I know what's coming from. Because I did the other side. I'm going to go over. I'm going to make sure my spine and my rib cage activates. And it's harder for me to activate this side. So I'm trying to get that. I'm going up and that's the easy one in my opinion. That's the sunshine. Then I'm going to sink more of me into the midline. But make my rib cage still activate. And for this side, it's not so much turning as lengthening on the underside. Because this side, the pose is different. And I know this because I know the sensation of something becoming yoga, not just a stretch back to the midline. Right? So that's part of why I take so much time trying to show you when something goes from bad stretching to good stretching to yoga. Because that's how you're going to know the differences on your asymmetrical body from side to side. Don't try to make the sides be the same. You'll do violence. Your will lose connection to the truth. Right? So I'm going over here again. I'm making sure I activate my rib cage because I want the fingers of my spine to receive my breath. So on this side, to keep this side long, I know that it helps for me to push in on this side of my rib cage. It would help everybody. It shows you, gives you reference again. I mean, the asana is trying to give different inputs to from your body to your brain to your mind. Up, turn, midline, keep the ribs active. For me, that means lengthening the downside. For you, it might mean turning. Whew. Good, and then release. So if you were to know the differences more between Parsvakonasana and Trikonasana, and then come back to the midline, find your midline. I'm going to nourish by bringing my legs in closer to Tadasana, pushing it on my femur bones. So my midline gets more reference. So I stay in alignment. But if you were to side flank pose, Parsvakonasana is a really hard pose. It's deeper than Trikonasana, kind of, in a way, because it goes more from the earth or more from what the yogis are calling the moon, right? The darker energy, the coolness of nighttime. So what do I mean there? So like, you got to figure out, why are these yogis using these words? When I just do Trikonasana, when my focus is more like this, let's call that sun, right? Let's call this into the midline more like the moon, right? When I do Trikonasana, my will gets to celebrate the sun more. When I sink back into the midline, my mind has to earn the sun differently, right? Remember, it's not that there's no sunlight at night. The moon is illuminated by the sun. It's just harder to reach. So these yogis are using such interesting descriptive terms to try to get you to understand and feel different qualitative energy sensations. It's crazy. So bring your hands back into prayer. So sometime practice different movements and ask yourself a question that doesn't have an exact answer. Is this more sun-like or moon-like? What's going on here? When I soften the inside of my mouth and I force the dichotomy of sunlight or moonlight, which is a force, you're forcing it on there, what would you say? Is the midline darker? Not in like a moral way, but like, is it less tangible? Yes. Damn, these breadcrumbs coming from the yogis. But they're for your experience, not for the yogi's knowledge. There's no exact meaning here except your practice. Are you willing to explore? That you're on this class means, yeah, you are. Yeah. You know, you hear things like, he has a noble spirit or she has a noble spirit. Do you not allow that you have one? In your willingness to try to explore, it's noble. You don't have to. Don't let these words be for other people only. They're for you. Good. And then prepare for Shavasana. And your own practice and openness to your own practice, without drawing too many conclusions other than the conclusion that you need to practice more, that willingness to stay open to your own experience is what being noble is, in my opinion, in your yoga practice. It's willingness to stay open to it, to not have to have the answers, to let it be unknown a little bit, to not make it subject to my will, right? It's bigger than my will, for God's sakes. Soften the skin on your face, the jaw, the inside of the mouth. Take support from your chair. Let it seep into you. Be noble. Let it have meaning. Just don't draw conclusions. Accept what comes out of your practice. I need to balance my head over my neck. Do what you need. Feel the hum. Trust it. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Feel, think your body, but do it as a sensation. Not as a mental act. Start to bring yourself back. Gradually increasing your inhalation, lengthening your exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes and let the light in. God dang, I'm glad there's light. Close your eyes again. God dang, I'm glad there's a relief from the light. And then have both when you open your eyes next. Huh. Those intercostal muscles, man, they're the keys to your fingers receiving, right? And all the asanas and standing poses are trying to get you to get sun, earth, and sky traveling through your body. Right? Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you. Sorry